repos, so repos and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think the only thing for Git file that we currently want to store in configuration is the token.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh.
so we will eventually need a token for any lookups if it's private repos.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So that's a broker that we can add. And I think for the repo table, we already have a string property on there um, for token as well, so that if we don't want to use our own token and we need special permissions, we can use a token that they've provided us.
Ah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
So
Um, Bro, X is so broken. I'm trying to stream to X and it's giving me premium account on X Twitter is required. I have premium plus. It's so broken that anyway. All right. Thanks, Elon. He burnt the whole thing to the ground. You know, one of the funny things I heard when Elon Musk bought Twitter is that he asked people to print the source code on actual physical paper so he can take a look at it and
oh
review
well,
it.
a lot of paper.
So stupid. But anyway, the point is, um, I wanted to, well, let's do this first before this we start this session. Then let's go to I want to say thank you first to the people that have been kind of, heavily contributing to our open source repository for Git file. Uh, I see a lot of closed pull requests in here, merged pull requests. Look at all that work. Look at all the work that people have been doing. It's beyond amazing. Just the fact that people are just kind of really excited about the project, want to be a part of a big system like this. The cleanliness and the organization of this repo. That's the thing that I discovered, Christo. Like, give engineers a clear guidance and a playbook and watch them roll, right? And sometimes you end up with two different kinds of engineers, people who want to dig deeper and people who want to make progress. You need both. You
Mm,
need the x-axis and the y-axis just to make the x and y-axis just to make things work. But anyway,
yeah.
okay. So, and then there's still a bunch of open issues. They're not for grabs, right? Reserved for
No.
stream. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So we need to finish exceptions on this
Mm-hmm.
foundation service, and once we've done that,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think we can open all those up because the modify and reads are so similar to the add.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think until we've done with this, uh, we'll keep them not open yet.
Yeah.
Um, there's a couple of entities we can add to the brokers for like configurations I've mentioned. We still need
Uh-huh.
commits and rev- uh, I think
Mm-hmm.
review requests. So there's at least three that we can add if people are looking for work to do.
Sounds good.
Um,
Sounds good. Oh, that's why you were talking about this whole configuration table thing and how you're going to get that token API to API.
yeah,
I'm with you 100%. I think that's a good idea, and I'm more than happy to, to kind of give an overview about that with you. I also want to say hi to the people on the stream. Hi, Jalaluddin, um, Raul, Monk, Richard. 11. Oh my God, 1 a.m. from the Philippines. That's really really late. But what time is it in London right now, Christo? I never
6
asked.
o'clock.
6 p.m. Okay,
Yep.
perfect. It's perfect. It's 10 a.m. here in Redmond, Washington. So we are all over the place, which is amazing. Okay, do you wanna okay, let's push forward with some validations because that's the main topic here, and then we'll talk a little bit before the end of the stream about, what we're gonna do with the configuration. Is that fair? Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so where did we stop last? We were at the
So
point where we added some validations. We checked for null
yeah,
validation, right? We basically went and said, okay, well, I want to make sure before that object is passed onto the database where it's going to make all kinds of trouble. I want to make sure that this particular model is null, is not null. That's the outer structural validation, but there's this inner structural validation, which is a GUID is not supposed to be an empty GUID for the ID. And oh, by the way, did you hear about this GUID version 7 that's not 100% randomized, but it has a time factor in it, so you can fragment and kind of partition your database based out on it. Did you hear about that stuff?
No, not looked into that yet.
So this is just part of like the nice to know, right? Nice to know. There's no adaptation for this yet, so I wanted to kind of just bring it up to everyone's attention that there has been some effort in developing a version 7 for GUIDs for .NET. And the interesting thing about this is that it this GUIDs are kind of randomized by default. Like they're actually randomized. You're not supposed to make sense of them. They're randomized because they kind of protect the creation of this, not to have to know about the other GUIDs. Like imagine if you're using like actual integers for your GUID, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes you might push an object with an ID that matches an object that already exists with the same ID, and then you get a conflict, right? Some people say, oh, let the database do that. But the direction that we have is that we let the consumer actually own filling in the object, all the details of this object, and we're just validating and persisting. That keeps it, very consistent. At least you're not filling in data internally in the system. Hence, we don't use DTOs. We don't do any of that. But the one thing I wanted to kind of talk to everyone about is this version 7 UUID. Let me show you here. The version 7 UUID is a time-ordered universally unique identifier, right? That uses 48 bits to encode. So it basically combined the best of two worlds, right? So you have both there. You use in C sharp. Yeah, this one. There it is. I think this guy had to do it by hand. Let me just kind of read this for people, and then we'll find the right links for it. So it combines the best of two worlds. It's totally random. It's still quote random because it has some randomization in it, but it has a time factor in it. So you can fragment it. You can partition a database based out on it, which is great because it makes your database so much faster, right? But also it has the randomization part, right? Why the randomization is important? Because if you use only integers, you're going to end up with a teacher and a student with the same ID, teacher ID 1 and student ID 1, and it's just the most confusing thing in the world, right? At some point, Christo, what I'm hoping to do is that for the community to be able to develop a .NET library that will generate random IDs with a particular structure. So you're not always getting that big, GUID structure because they look really bad on grids. If you have a grid and you're trying to show the IDs, they look really, really bad. Like if you're building an enterprise system, it doesn't make sense. But also more importantly, like for people, for the human eye to be able to go and say, yeah, that guy started with 7D and ended up with 23. So it's very short and concise, but it's also randomized. So
Mhm.
building a .NET library that you select a format or pass in your own format and it randomly generates, that's huge. It could help everywhere. Just another idea, another project, Christo. This is one of tiny projects, but they have huge impact, like exception, right? They're
Yeah.
very tiny, but that's the thing about tooling, right? Tooling in the open source is that you're building something that might probably take you a weekend, but like RESTful Sense, when I built RESTful Sense, it took me exactly a weekend, and then it grew up to be this crazy,
Mm.
situation. Richard says still renders as GUID to be released in .NET 9. Yeah, that's the one. So still in preview. ULID's library already does this. Is shorter than GUID. Is currently, but can use. But that's the thing, Rich. Can I choose the format now? That's what I want to push with this community. Like, what if I want my format to be strictly 5 digits or 2 letters, 5 digits with a particular prefix and postfix? 25 years doing this, I've always seen people have to customize that to get to that point. You like think about your when you buy an airplane ticket, you have an ID in it. Someone had to customize that. It didn't come out of the box with a particular library and whatnot. Do you know what I use sometimes? I'll tell everyone this. The ticks. You know, the ticks on the date time offset, it gives you the number of ticks on the processor. These are random and they're very hard. Well, they're not random, they're pure time ticks, but they rely on your microprocessor. Very hard to have to generate identical ticks at the same time. It's crazy. It works though. It's pretty good. But yeah, there's that to go with V7 part that I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to see how we're going to use it and whatnot. Okay, let's start talking about validations. So everyone here on this stream might probably remember the part about how validations are either structural or logical and external. Today we're gonna kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. We did the high level outer structural validation, but your source model, and I love that we picked up the source model. It's sweet and small and simple. It has only 3 properties on it. It would probably be nice if we added a little bit of audit fields in there, like created date, updated date, created by, updated by, because I'm assuming there will be like a management or a back office or an admin portal for Git files. So how are you managing from the back end
Mm.
versus what's actually being displayed to people on the front end? Say I just throw another project, another repo, just like that. Okay, so if you look in here, we have 3 forms, 3 pieces of data. We have the ID, which is a GUID. We want to verify that that GUID is not empty. That's a logical validation. It's not structural because an empty GUID is a valid structure, but we want to make sure that this ID doesn't have particular specific type of content, which is empty content. So that's what we call logical validation. Name should not be null, empty, or white space. What do you think about that? Null, empty, white space. That sounds like structural validation. And then
Yeah.
URLs, in addition to being null, empty, or white space, we want to make sure that it's not that it's a valid URL format. And that one gets interesting. Like we expect it to be HTTPS at least. Starts with HTTPS and then it has whatever going on in there. So we're gonna need to kind of so the structural part of this is that the string is not null, empty, or white space. The logical part is to make sure it actually follows a strictly particular URL format. Okay, how do we write a test for that? So that goes right under this validation piece here. I'm gonna go here and say theory. Why theory? Because I'm going to be passing a bunch of different types of invalid string values, null, empty, and white space, right? So you can go here and say inline data. So you have null, right? I don't know, did your control D stop all of the sudden from working on your Visual Studio? What happens when you do
Yeah.
control D? It stopped, right? What
It stopped. I
happened?
had to go set it again.
How did you set it? Because it's so
Um,
annoying. I stopped by itself.
if you go tools options and you go to your keyboard commands, you can search for duplicate. I think it's Alt F9 at the moment or something like that.
Why did they do
But,
that? That's not nice.
so I just
Duplicate.
reprogrammed it.
Was that like by accident or was it intentional? Did it take a space for something else or something? That's so weird. Duplicate, right? So
Yeah.
I I know it's not showing probably, but I'll get to it later. But actually, no, I won't get to it later because I want to show it to people. So it's really unfortunate that StreamYard doesn't let me share the actual screen that I want to share. Wait, show me how you do it, Christo. I want people actually
Um,
to see it. I'm sharing your screen now. Go ahead. How do you do
if
it?
you just
See, it shows up on your machine. How come it doesn't show up on my machine? Are you
I,
sharing the
sh
whole
I, sh
screen or something?
I sh yeah, I shared the whole screen.
Ah, that's why. That's why.
Um,
So what did you do? Keyboard.
Um,
Okay, keyboard, and then you basically you search for duplicate.
edit duplicate, and then because mine is already Control D,
Uh-huh.
I remove the current binding, and then I just add Control D.
Nice, nice. So you basically um so
So
you removed
remove that, and then
and
on
then you
this
just
you
click assignment.
Control D
Oh,
and
you
then
just
assign
actually
it.
type it out or you just do it on the
I,
keyboard?
you just do it on the keyboard in the text keys pressed.
Nice, nice, very nice. Okay, yeah, that works. Let's see. Oh man, I was surprised. I was like, what happened to my? I'll take your screen now. So do you have to restart Visual Studio for it to work?
No, it was immediately for me.
Weird. Let me try again. Keyboard. Thank you, by the way. This was really annoying. I didn't know what happened. I was like, what
Yeah.
happened to my shortcuts? It's
Well, I think it was.
edit.duplicate, right? Uh,
Yeah, I think it was immediate for me, but I'm not sure now. It was a while back that I did it.
huh. And it also tells you whether it's like the is it conflicting with something else? You know what I mean? But I really
Yeah,
like that it came out of the box with Control D. That was much better,
yeah,
honestly. So okay, let me try again. Yeah, there it is. I feel so much better now.
mm,
Yeah, shortcuts are like superpowers for software engineers, guys. Like if you know your shortcuts on Visual Studio, your development time will be so much better. Anyway, so should throw validation exception if source is invalid and log it async. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
yeah,
So we're basically assuming, and this is a theory, meaning that I'm gonna pass here an invalid string format.
yeah.
So for people who've, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
It's just on add for that method.
Oh, we need on add. That's right.
Yeah,
Exception on add like that.
yeah, yeah. We
Are
missed
we
it on
over?
both.
Are we over 120 characters now? No, we're just 91, right? So on add like that. Someone asked me, by the way, about the readability. If you really want a different kind of way to represent your test, you can basically just type the name in here. I think it's called a name, display name,
Display name.
right?
Yeah,
Test validation if source is null. If you do that, you will see it showing up in here in a readable format. Let me show you. So check this out, source test. Watch what this test look like. Test validation if source is null. Pretty cool.
yeah,
Pretty cool, right? There was also another thing that you can do, which is, gosh, I can't remember, but you could actually put tags on your tests. And when you run the test, you can specifically select certain types of tests that you want to run in the build. So if you have acceptance tests and you have integration tests and you have unit tests, you could actually put like gosh, I can't remember, but it's in the table in here that trait. Yeah, trait. That's what it
mm,
was. So trait will allow you to basically run like here's the name for the trait, like let's say X, right? And the value is I don't know 1. And you when you run the test, you can specify particular options to run a particular test based on a particular trait. Anyway, did Control X still work? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who really like I don't know why they changed that, but that was okay, given when then. Okay, and then we want to structure an invalid source basically. So this is a source, invalid source, right? And that source will have invalid values in it. So these are our invalid values. We don't have to do the contributors for the source, but here we are. This is an empty GUID like that. So that's an invalid GUID. But see, the name and the string both are invalid as an invalid string, like it's null, empty, or white space. And we want an exception that actually resembles that problem, right? So I'm going to go here and say var invalid source exception equal new invalid source exception. We don't have that yet, which is understandable because we need
mm,
to create one. So let's just go back here at the models level And under sources, I'm going to go and create a new exception, and I'm going to call it invalid source exception. Okay, let's add copyrights of the standard organization, the coalition of good-hearted engineers, and then here's a CTOR, string message. I think that's pretty much it, right? And you know, you base we don't write the messages in there anymore. That's the new thing, right? Like that. It's
That's it.
crazy
Yeah.
how how a lot of people. I just want to remind people of this, like, we had people join our organization. Like, this is a big example. Abdul Samad, for instance, a member of our organization. He changed the way we write. All of us write code, right? Just by simply saying, hey, you guys said you're not supposed to enforce, our models are supposed to be anemic, and you're basically, adding in messages. We used to write the actual message in the exception itself in the past, but his observation was right. So never underestimate opinions. Junior, senior, principal, started coding yesterday, have been coded for 300 years. It doesn't matter, right? Everyone's opinion matters. Okay, so here's a message, and I'm gonna go and say source is invalid, right?
Yep.
Fix the errors and try again, something like that. And then we want to add these validation errors that we have. So invalid source message dot data dot add, and I want to go and say data add, and then I want to go and say name of. So never actually hard code the property. So it's source.id, for instance, right? And you want to put in the message in there. So this should say name like that, and this should say value or message. Let's see, what are the parameters on this thing? Add has
As name
key and
must
value.
be key. Yeah.
Key and value. There you go. ID is invalid, like that. And then we want to repeat that. So you're basically building the problem details in your controller API response. Problem details tells you why every single property you have in the system are incorrect, and you need to fix them. So instead of going back and forth, and believe it or not, at some stage in the standard community, we used to to actually return an error and break the circuit if we find just one problem. And then consumers of the API had to error out and come back and error out and come back every time they discover a new problem. That didn't work, right? So in here I say value is required, right?
A text is required.
Or text is required.
Yeah. Hassan, can you also show where you got that rules from? I think it'll be useful for
The rules?
people. Yeah. So
Huh.
you've added a rule for ID name and last one is URL, but
Oh,
we need
that?
to no the ones you just did. So you've done those criteria 75 to 85.
Mm-hmm.
And just so for the people, we would get that from us. We will correlate that with our storage broker configuration file. So if you show people that quickly.
Where we get the rules from.
Yeah, so if you show the storage broker,
Oh,
just for,
yeah.
for other people,
Storage broker here.
source and then
Source
so
configurations. This
yeah,
here.
so that's what we want to enforce now. So we can see name is required. ID is also required because we know it's a primary key, but by the looks of it, that URL is also required. So if people ever wonder where that rules come from, they can look at the configuration file to see what is required.
Yeah.
Because you,
I uh, uh, I
because you
still
don't want
mhm.
the database to throw errors that you're not catching. You can add more rules on top of that, but this is the minimum that you need to cater for.
Right. I still need to come back to talk to you a little bit about adding the rules in the database, from a service perspective, because if we decide to change it just for whatever reason, if we decided that the name is supposed to be 400 characters, I feel like something like this belongs more in the service layer instead of the
Yeah,
database layer. But
I
but
think
we
it's
can
got a
just
I think it's got a place for both, because if you need to keep your database small or whatever, you don't want to just leave your string fields
That's right,
unstuck.
but you
So
also
so
don't want your business rules in two different places.
no,
That's the
yeah,
whole
no, I agree
reason.
on that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I think there's on this it's valid. So we've got the Fluent to specify what the database would look like. But definitely you would have your business logic to drive that
Yeah,
as well.
I
So
mean
so
that.
so these are more for
Mhm.
optimization of your database.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole reason why we don't put business logic rules in the UI or exposure layers in
Mm,
general, because you will
yeah,
end up, if you want to change one rule, you'll end up doing it in many places, which is not what we wanna do.
yeah, yeah.
Ali has a question for you. Ali Hamid. He says, is it correct to put a default message for the exception? Like Ali, do you mean in the model itself, like in here, we used to do that. We used to have a message in here by default. So we used to have an override here that looked like this. So this here used to look like this: message, invalid source exception. But then your model is no longer anemic, meaning that your model is supposed to not have functionality or data, and it's supposed to describe what data is supposed to look like, but not have rules. Like you'll see some folks will put rules in their model, be like required with a tag and whatnot. But then how do you test drive that? Right? It becomes a problem when you test drive something like that. But also, how do you internationalize that, Ali? Like if you want to turn this into Arabic or French or whatever, right? How are you gonna internationalize that? It becomes a problem. But when you do it in your unit test, now you have control at your service layer to pass in, to inject a configuration that will pass in the message that you want to pass for whatever exception. So that's why we rolled back from that approach. We used to be that, and we changed that approach. Okay, so these are bunch of rules, right? Now we need the expected source validation exception, right? Which is new source validation exception. Look at AI. AI is writing the message. Do you see?
Nice, yeah.
Wow. Look at that. What do you think about that? That's crazy. Source validation error occurred. Fix errors and try again. Cool. And then the rest is the same, right? Can I steal the message from the rest? Here, let's steal this. I'm gonna take
Yeah.
all that. I'm just gonna put it right here. I don't know if I copied the win. I think I did. Yeah, there you go. So instead of null source, I'm putting in invalid source. Sorry, Christo, I took the easy one. Now you're the one that has to.
Yeah.
Monk is saying line 84 should be source URL. Yes, yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you. See, I love pair programming. You're pairing with the world, basically, or specifically 7 people or 8 people on the stream right now. So Um, that looks like a good test. Let me just walk people through what I did. I created an invalid source. This test will run 3 times, right? This test will basically run one time with null, one time with empty, with an empty space, and one time with no space at all, like string.empty, right? And for every time it will pass these invalid values here in the name and URL. And I'm going to tell you about an issue in that particular test, Krista. There's actually a hole in that test that can be easily bypassed, but I'll tell you about that later. That's the beauty about doing the same thing over and
Mm,
over and over. You keep improving, right? And then I basically said, when these pieces are invalid, what's going to happen is that I expect an invalid source exception that will say source is invalid, fix the errors and try again. And then we build, not a lot of people use that particular power. And like in your typical exception, has a thing in it called data. And that data gets converted automatically at the controller level into problem details. This data is key value pairs. And what we basically do is that we say, here is why your request is invalid. Your ID is not right, or your URL is not right, or your name, the name of the model is not right, right? Um, and then expect source validation exceptions, source validation. So that's the wrapper, the categorization, and then you basically you build the task, and then you run that task with an encapsulator that ensures, to give you the actual validation exception, and then you validate that your actual meets or matches your expected exception. You also validate that you logged an error, that your logger is working, right? So you actually logged an error when that happens, and you validate that you didn't make any calls to the database, right? Because your object is invalid. So you didn't make any calls to the database. Finally, you verify that your dependencies have not been called anywhere else other than what you've explicitly verified, right?
Yeah.
It seems like a bulletproof test, Christo, right?
Yeah.
It actually isn't. But I'll tell you about that. Let me just take note because I'm gonna forget, right? So there are actually two issues in that test. But let me just make it fail. I'll take two notes. Well, let's make sure it fails for the right reasons, right? Because just the test is failing is not enough. We want to make sure that it actually is failing for all the right reasons. Let's see here. Here's a failure. Why is it failing? It's saying in the failure. See, it ran 3 times. See, guys? And every single time it'll tell you what it passed. Actually, like if you extend this guy a little bit, see, the input parameter is empty space, no space, and null. And at the bottom here, it's saying, I expected you to throw an exception, but no exception was thrown. That's the right, that's the right error. That's the right error to have. So I'm going to copy that test name and I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to say fail, and I'm going to send it over to Crystal to make it pass. But before we do that, there's a couple of comments here that we got. Richard says putting the data validation rules in a config file instead of a database would allow changes to be done without redeploying if following the options pattern. What do you think about that? Data validation rules in config file.
Mm, I don't know. I've never had a situation where that often change. So, and we're also dealing with migration. So, I don't know. I'll have to think
The
about that a
the one
bit.
thing that the one thing that scares me about about adding validation rules in a configuration file is that a configuration file once deployed in production in Azure or whatever, right, could be changed with no source control. So no one would actually review it. No one would see it. Sometimes developer might require access to your environments, and then they might change that file without code change. So they bypass the code review, they bypass the builds. And if you change your configuration rules, how do you expect your unit tests to verify that? That's another problem that we may have. I would love to see something like that, Richard. Like I would like to see what that would look like. Richard says keep things like that out of the database since they are config concerns. True, but I want to distinguish between configurations that happens at the application layer versus a configuration that is part of the actual business flow. Like we're configuring repository access so we can pull requests for this repository, and it needs a registration. It needs a lot of, we want it to be part of our flow. Monk says we are like the natural, I think he meant AI. IA is different. AI is like they're telling us what's wrong with the that's true. And then hello Ace and hello Ahmed. Hi everyone. All right, Christo, you're gonna make it pass, right? And then I'm gonna tell you
Yeah.
our why the way we've been doing things is wrong.
Okay. Cool.
This might depress some people. Be like, can he just let us be happy for 1 second? There's actually two big holes in our validation test. I'm gonna let people actually in the chat guess. What's the problem with this test? Can you bypass this test while having bad information in there? I'll tell you in a bit. I'll just let Christo kind of do his thing.
Um, wait. So we're going to create a method that will apply validation rules for us.
It's like you're
we
building a
connect.
business rules engine that you
Yeah,
pass
so
rules to it, and it just knows what to do.
let's pick that up already. So we're gonna create a dynamic rule. Um,
How did it know that? I think the
Look
standard
at
is
that.
already baked into the AI model of it's so weird, man. Because we've never done this on this particular project. Like this is the very first time that we're writing these validation rules on this particular project.
Yeah,
So it's definitely picking up from somewhere else, 100%.
yeah. Look at that. That's not quite right. Um,
While you're doing this, Monk is saying one problem I see is ensure just only one property is that's
yeah,
one. That's one. That's one hole. 100%. Monk, one heck of a smart dude. Like, he's just sitting there. Are you still okay? I don't want to say where he's at, but wherever you are, somewhere in Europe, you know, it's crazy. It's true. This is one problem. This test validates and ensures only an exception happens when all the properties are wrong. But if one property is wrong, you could actually bypass this test. Crazy. We're gonna try it. We're gonna try it together. So this invalid piece is like a dynamic object, which is basically it's the rule. It's the structure of the
yeah,
rule. So there's rule, there's data being passed to apply to that rule. And then there is the actual business rules engine. Imagine writing a business rules engine in 11 lines of code, just 11 lines of code. That's one really nice part about this community.
yeah. Um, okay, yeah. So that is the two rules, and then we just need to do the. Let's done that as well. Um, so
I think it's invalid
patch.
source, right? The inner one,
Yeah, yeah.
invalid source exception. Yep.
Why is it not picking it up?
Because you have remove the word validation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Do you know what's the shortcut for selecting just one word in the class? Control Shift
Control Shift
Alt.
right.
No,
Oh,
Control Shift Alt right or left. Try it. See what it does. Control Shift Alt right. See? Super
that's nice.
useful.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I think the message is source is invalid or something like that. Just confirm with the unit tests to make sure. Yep. So what does I think this guy still needs to do? See, this is how I know this thing is picking up from maybe an older pattern that we used to have, because see how it says invalid source exception data dot
yeah,
count is more than 0, which is a problem we solved in the exception model itself. Throw if contains error.
yeah,
Very, very interesting how AI works. So Monk, you picked up one. One problem I see is to ensure just the property, right? Um, what else? There's something else, Monk, in this that another hole in that test. Richard says a dot call to this fake whoa broker dot get product by skew async must not have happened. Yep. We we're still so a little bit of a drama happened in the past, Richard, with mock and whatnot, and we had to branch out of mock, so we forked that repo and we created a clean mock, and then we basically are just pending the effort to start building um, like a mutation of that. Um, the thing about switching to a different library and whatnot is that we want to make sure it has, we need to research it. We need, as a community, we need to research, is this what we're adapting? Is it what we're adopting as a test or mocking library? I'll give it a shot. Fake it easy. Is Fake It Easy the one that comes from Progress? Who owns Fake It Easy, by the way? Is it a company? Fake it easy. It's faking amazing. See what they did there. No, I don't think Progress owns this. It's just its own thing. Cool. We'll give it a shot. We'll take a look at it. We had some pain with Mock. Monk, what do you think about what do you think about the syntax of Fake It Easy? A dot call to something. I hate that you have to pass a function, like a fake function like this, open close parens and a fat arrow just to say, take this as a function instead of just calling the function directly like you do in mock. I don't know. We're gonna have to have a community discussion about it. So
I've messed up my Visual Studio now.
what happened? Did it freeze your Visual Studio?
I couldn't see, so I dragged the panes out, and now my panes is gone.
I still see the cursor, your cursor, and I still see Visual Studio. What are you looking for?
So
The Test Explorer?
Test
Oh,
Explorer, yeah.
click on tests at the top and then view. Yeah, there it is. It should be here. Okay.
So it's not used to sitting on a small screen, so.
Yeah, Monk says Fake It Easy is a little too advanced and may not be too intuitive. I agree. It needs a little bit of thinking. I want it to be really simple, like level 0 simple. Just if that test is not passing, Christo, I think it's because of the language. Okay, let's see. Text is required, ID is required. You got those, right? Is the exception language right?
It says unable to cast system string to.
Generic
I
list.
I think that.
Oh, wait. That's my mistake. Go back to the test. Go
I
back.
think it's values on the test, isn't it?
Yeah, it's yeah. I felt weird about the yeah. There's I think it's add data also. It's not data dot add. I think there's a method that comes right out of the box here. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's my bad. I felt weird about it. I wasn't sure what was wrong, but I think that was it. Yeah. Easy peasy. Let's do it. Come on. Did it run already?
Yeah.
Expected find ID key ID is invalid, but found values ID is required. Yeah, I think you should put invalid instead of required because an empty GUID is still present. It's still an ID. It's just invalid. That's all. Oh
Yeah.
my God, Krista, what happened? All your windows
I'm
are gone.
I'm struggling. Yeah. So it's
ID is
just
invalid.
this. It's just on this one that we want invalid then.
Yeah, this will probably
Uh,
just trigger a whole bunch of code drop PRs across because I know that some
okay.
people do IDs required. Oh,
Yeah.
look,
So that.
you made it pass. Yay.
Um, There's my Git.
Oh, just click the pencil. I always click the pencil at the bottom right. It just brings the stuff that I want. So that's a pass. Cool.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. So
So
we probably want yep, yep, Richard, that's fine. You know, there are all kinds, that's the beauty about software, you know. By the way, just so everyone understands, uh, a lot of you must have heard about what happened, you know, just 2 days ago or just yesterday, I think, about the CrowdStrike thing. All, you know, Windows servers around the world have been restarting and whatnot. I wanna just bring something to everyone's attention. Monopoly in the software market being too big that everyone is using the same tool is so dangerous, because if one thing goes wrong with that tool, the whole world goes into pieces, right? All the infrastructure, all the airports just goes into pieces. So the diversity of tooling and options in the software market kind of is like an implicit layer of security that makes sure we don't all go offline just because one person pushed one line of code into this one big monolith that's controlling the world and is in every system. Just a big lesson that I learned from this whole CrowdStrike fiasco is that, you know, you want to diversify, you want to make sure there are different options and multiple tools, which is something I want to embed in our community as well, as a practice, right? You know, use this tool or that tool, and that's how you standardize your software. We're still very mono, kind of single direction when it comes to tooling, but I want to kind of spread the ability to kind of implement the same concepts with just with different libraries. And I know some people like far, you know, away from the spotlight in the standard community. They follow the standard, but they implement it in their own way. It would be it would be interesting. Richard says ended being a driver file that got zeroed out. Oh my God. We keep hearing we and notice caught it. Yeah, yeah. So Richard, you'd be interested to know that we're pushing the boundaries on a unit test to weigh the method, to actually catch if any new instruction was passed into a method. I bet you nothing does that out there, not just yet. But Crystal and I are researching. We're trying to see what we can do with it. We talked about it in the last session, right?
mm.
Okay, so what you
I wonder
have
if
next.
anybody, I wonder if anybody else took the challenge up. I saw you posted it in the
It's hard. I mean, you're kind of
Discord.
asking
Yeah.
people for sci-fi there. You're basically telling people, hey, do magic. Put your C# method in a scale and weigh it and tell us whether it's the same weight or not. That the harder challenge was, do you know what was the easy, lazy option for this? Is to actually get the actual text of the method and weigh it. But that doesn't work because if you change the name of a variable, that's gonna fail,
Mm.
which is allowed. We are allowing the change of a name of a variable. I just don't want you to pass more instructions into the method. And that's what this Sessel Mono library does. It's pretty cool. Good deal. So anyway, so push that passing test
Yeah,
up
that's done.
upstream, and next session we close this service by handling exceptions, right?
If we've got one more validation test though,
For what?
to validate the required length.
Ah, yeah. So I still don't know if I want to put that 255. Is that 255 characters?
Yeah, we can make it whatever, but we still need to do the validation for that in the business logic.
Let's do the logic next time then. Logic and exceptions, because exceptions are going to be very easy. You're going to handle SQL exception. You're going to handle conflict exception, source already exists exception. And then the
Mm.
last one would be a dependency exception and service exception.
Yeah.
With this logic, that's 5 different tests that we have to write next time.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just another structural validation we need.
Structural validations. That's right.
Mm.
That's right.
And maybe next week I can show the changes to exception.
Awesome. Awesome. Richard says, actually, Monk first says, what's the other hole you have in mind? Well, I have a lot of holes, right ear, left ear, my nose, and my mouth. A lot of holes in my mind. But um, at least let people just think about it. I don't want to give you all the good stuff at once. Just take some time. I'll tell you in the community. I'll tell you in the chat. How about that?
Just say the issue again, Hassan. I didn't listen to that when you asked. I was coding the test. So what's the problem with the
I
test?
I was saying to people there are two holes in this test. The first hole, Monk caught it, which was the ability to test individual issues. The test is assuming every property is failing, but it doesn't validate when one property is failing.
Is that true? Is the
Yeah,
throw if errors not counting if there's any items in the data collection?
yeah, but I can easily modify the logic to say if the errors. Let me show you. Actually, this is fun here. This is you pushed it, right? You pushed and I want people to pay attention to this one because this is how you kind of this is craftsmanship, right? This is what Christo and Monk bring to the table, right, to this community. So you already pushed that passing test, right?
Yeah.
That's already okay. So I'm gonna run everything. Watch this. Never be happy with your code. Always improve it. Always. That test is passing, right? Watch this, Christo. I can go here, just like that. And I can go into this really beautiful validation and I can do this. If invalid source exception dot data dot count is less than 3, is more than 2, then do that. Watch this. See, I added a security problem in your code. Watch the tests.
Mm.
Watch, watch, watch. I mean, if we can't criticize our own stand, look, they're all passed. Oh no. So that means that with that rule, your object could be complete garbage. It has all issues in it, but it's less than that. Don't be
Mm.
sad. I'm just telling you
Yeah.
that's how that community grows, right?
Yeah.
Do you see the
But
problem? Mhm.
I guess that comes back to the problem we spoke about. It's over a year ago now, where we sort of need a utility service,
Yeah.
because then you can do a utility service that's dead end service that you can actually reuse the validate method and you can test it. Because at the moment we haven't got any unit tests for validate.
That's one way to do it, but we can
Mm.
also kind of, if we figure out a way to iterate at the property level. So you're basically, you know how we're iterating invalid values? Can we generate one bad? And by the way, generating one bad is not enough either. Can you tell why? Monk, can you tell why? What if I created a test for every property? I still can bypass it. How do I bypass it? Can anyone here tell me? How can I bypass it if I do just one test per property? The same thing I just did. I can go and say, if the errors are more than 2 or equal 1, then throw. But if it's 2 issues, 2 errors, and 2 properties, then don't fail. Continue.
Mm.
We have to rethink everything. We have to rethink everything out there, right? So just because we've been doing things, that's evolution. That's the beauty about this standard. We're evolving as a community, right? He says, Raul is saying we need to pass every single value to the test. You mean the value of the property. But what if there are 2 properties that are bad instead of 1 or all? So you have that delta in the middle that I still can use to bypass your beautiful unit tests. right? But there's another big hole in that test. Other than that,
Um, we should be able to test that.
how?
Um,
Let's say I've seen a model that has 175 properties in it. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. 175 properties. Big, massive Oracle database that we wanted to push through and we wanted to do migration, right? Um, if you
so,
say, go ahead, go ahead.
so my thinking is we can test like we test for the login broker. We can
Hmm.
check physically test if that throw if error contain errors is being called. That can be our expectation. You can't bypass that because your test will then say.
Oh, that's a brilliant solution. Oh, Christo, you are just
So
an angel, brother. I swear to God. Yes, that could work. If you go and say the expected exceptions contains any errors, that,
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Let's try it. So you're basically saying, hold on. So you're basically saying here, but I feel it's indirect, but it works. So watch this. This is the bug that I created in our test,
So yeah.
right?
So I would test for that line 61 to be thrown in called in all occasions
Yes,
where you.
but hear me out. I can. This is what I learned from what you just said. I could be wrong, but what I learned is that actual source validation exception, inner exception dot data should, right, not be 0. Would that catch it?
No, because you can still wrap your logic around uh, that method call to manipulate it.
So if I run this
So,
test right now, I could be wrong.
I think we can just do a verify
Huh.
uh, on that throw if contain errors.
So what would that look like, Crystal?
Um, what I've got in my head at the moment, and we might need to. It,
Hmm.
um,
We
you,
could
you
find
remember
some.
the bit
Uh,
of code I can play with it, but the bit of code I'm thinking of is what I put in Discord a while back. How you would
mm,
verify it in service. So if we can do an upgrade on exceptions to make that method virtual,
hmm.
we can verify that that method is being called at least once. I can do the book for that for next week.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, you want to verify that the actual exception,
So
but
that
how do you,
that line that line 65
yeah,
on the
yeah,
so so
yeah.
so
You
it'll be a
want to
mock ver.
verify that this happened.
Yes.
I see what you're
Um,
saying.
and for that to happen, we need to just change that throw if contain errors to be a virtual. And then we can use that code that I've done for the alternate option to internal mock.
S right. I mean, here you go, a standard upgrade, right? I'll let you kind of play with that. I'm sorry, I see two projects at the same time. There's actually more, but just
Yeah,
going back to this, there is a hole
I'll
in
have
our
that.
test,
I'll
right?
have that ready for next week. Yeah, I'll play with that and I can demo that with the other exception change.
I'll take one last comment and then we'll go. Richard says, I'm also experimenting with using result success, but Richard, with result success, I've seen everyone getting hyped about this. You can't terminate. The thing about exceptions is that they terminate the flow. But if you return a result that has an error in it, it could go all the way upstream until one method. Like you don't want to jump through multiple services until you reach the controller so you can report something went wrong. You want to terminate. You want to cut the circuit. And I feel that's the power of exceptions. It kind of allows you to kind of take a shortcut to your controller exposure layer and say, I'm done. There's nothing I can do here. This is a terminal state. But I'm open to learning more about it. Raul said we need to pass every single value. I use this way with new RESTful synths to validate permutation. Maybe the answer is not that, Monk. Maybe the answer is, the stuff that Krista just came up with to verify that that throw of contains error actually works. And even that has a hole in it, but I don't want to depress you. It's just so bad. but here's the thing. Here's the thing for everyone on this channel. I'm offering $50 Amazon gift card by the end of next week to come up with the second hole in our test. $50 gift card if you can find the second hole in our test. The reason why this is so important to me is because the amount of systems are built according to the standard today makes it almost mandatory upon all of us to continue to improve and secure our systems. The last thing I want to do is to the last thing I want to do is to find out a problem that globally caused a problem is coming from a standard compliance system that goes against what we're doing here. We're trying to build truly industrial software that can withstand challenges. And then Raul says, "You don't have to tell me the answer. I can wait." Hold on that $50. I was saying $50. That's the bounty, for whoever can find the second hole in that test. And I actually did give a hint to it in that stream, but if people are listening, I do say a lot of things, so catch it. Or feed the script of this video to an AI model and so ask it, what was the hint that Hassan was talking about? Thank you, everyone. Christo, as usual, isn't that fun? It's so fun, dude. We continue to grow and evolve. Someone told me this offline. He said, how many videos do you have to make about test-driven development and foundation services before you just decide to move on to new things?" I said, no, actually, in every single video, I'm adding something new, right? This might be the seventh or eighth video in that channel that talks about foundation services. But every single time there's a new thing. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thank
Yeah,
you, Krista.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you all. Beautiful community, beautiful session. Take care. Bye.
All right.